Have you heard of the notorious Chris Chan? You might have seen some YouTubers doing documentaries on this particular individual, but did you know that this person is also autistic? Well, I'm an autistic streamer, and today we're going to react to Turkey Tom's Chris Chan Came Back video. It's kind of an emerging sort of new piece of information in the Chris Chan story, and I'm going to be looking at it from the autistic perspective and see what I think about this whole situation. Let's go for it.
At this point, the list of LolCows will keep growing indefinitely. There are and always will be people willing to make a fool out of themselves online, unwittingly putting their lives up to get picked apart by anonymous trolls. However, there's one name that dominates the category, and that name is Chris Chan. The degree of delusion, the sheer longevity, the funny and memorable moments, the rogues gallery of unforgettable trolls, and the volume of documentation. It all makes for the greatest LolCow of all time. Unlike other cows who become too belligerent for their own good and end up burning themselves out too fast, Chris Chan has been providing the community with a slow burn experience, with many people even finding themselves empathizing with him along the way. However, after the events that took place in mid-2021, rates of empathy for Chris Chan plummeted to levels that had never been seen before.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and dudes of all teenagers. I am Christian Weston Chandler!
Christian Chandler.
Chris Chan is an autistic person who dedicated decades of his life to working on media related to his OC, Sonichu, a hybrid between Sonic and Pikachu. As a consequence, an entire community of trolls and onlookers to his story formed around him, pioneering LolCow culture and dubbing Chris the most documented man in history. After becoming thoroughly unhinged due to the success of a troll campaign to convince him that the fictional worlds of cartoons and video games are all real and would soon merge into ours, Chris jumped the shark that separated him from being a LolCow to being an actual criminal, when in June of 2021 he allegedly had intercourse with his own mother. And I should clarify here, it allegedly happened not one time, not two times, but once every 3 days beginning on June.
Okay. Well, one thing that I did want to ask you guys, if you guys have any sort of insight into this. Do you guys think, like, from the like amount of individuals out there who would be considered to be like LolCows, as Turkey Tom puts it, do you think there is a trend in the individuals who are sort of highlighted in that way? Like, are they sort of disproportionately tend to be autistic people? So it feels like it's, I don't know, I find this whole like LolCow culture sort of in general, I'm not really a big fan of like online trolling and like, you know, bullying and sort of making fun of people. It's not really something that I'm very partial to be honest. Yeah, it does seem this way. I mean, what Turkey Tom was mentioning about sort of the delusional aspect of things as well, I think that's something that is definitely like a coping mechanism that I've noticed in myself in my teenagehood, but also like talking to other autistic people. It does seem like we do sometimes develop like fictional kind of based delusions in order to cope with the social world, especially like during school. Most at least may have autistic traits. Most of them are neurodiverse, yeah. Sorry, I don't know what LolCow means. I think LolCow is it's particularly like one individual which like the internet highlights as a source of like trolling of laughs, like someone who is like ridiculous, and you know, sort of people humiliate them and sort of use them for laughs and such. I think I've got that right. There will be some like actual definition for that, I think. Let me see if there's like an urban dictionary version of it. What is a LolCow? I kind of know what it means, I just don't know how to describe it. LolCow, internet slang derogatory, a person whose eccentric or foolish behaviour can be exploited to amuse onlookers. Interesting. Eccentric behaviour can be exploited to amuse onlookers. I can see why, like, maybe a lot of autistic people might sort of fall victim to this. Have you seen the 80-part Chris Chan documentary? I have not. I've seen some passing sort of stuff around Chris Chan, but it's never really been. Whenever it's kind of centered around one particular individual, unless I find the story to be particularly like interesting in some way, I don't really, I like having some summaries about stuff that goes on. Maybe those people have some narcissistic tendencies. Well, I think, maybe in the case of autistic people who might sort of become these LolCows, there is like a pretty strong trend of social isolation among autistic people. And obviously like a lot of negative experiences, maybe a tendency towards delusion in order to kind of cope with that. Maybe. Let's all like the stream. Thank you, silly. LolCow equals collective bullying. That makes sense. Thank you very much to Mr. Austin Henshaw for giving On the Spectrum Extra a membership. If you want to check out the longer live streams on the Spectrum, you now have access to them if you want to watch them in the raw format.
June 27th, and only ending on July 30th, which means there were around 10 instances of it. Initially, he was self-aware enough to not tell anyone about this misdeed, knowing full well how people would react. And on some level, even he himself knew it was wrong, I think. Over the course of many years prior, there had been a lot of inklings that the relationship between Chris and his mom was odd, to say the least. For example, in 2010, in a call between some trolls that included Kim Wilson, a gal pal of Chris's, these things were said.
He's admitted that him and his mother spoon on his bed frequently. Chris has also said that he has had a dream about Barb, and in this dream, Barb is an Egyptian belly dancer.
In August 2016, Chris took to his Facebook to give his thoughts.
That is just, oh my god. What the fuck? Just straight in there with some like pretty reprehensible stuff. Oh my god. I'm sure he's probably gonna fill us in a bit more on like the details of it, but man, if that's like a true thing, that is grim. Chris Chan could be diagnosed with so many things, like I said, family, and the entire system failed them. It doesn't excuse the horrible behaviour, but it's not shocking. There's too much focus on our reaction to bullying instead of challenging the behaviour of bullies. That needs to change. Yeah, my ears need washing. Yeah. Not great. Not a great start for this this video. I hope there's some more sort of redeeming information, hopefully.
Thoughts on an article about a mother-son relationship. Who among everyone in this world has not had a dream of being with one of their parents, never acting on them ever? I, myself, did have dreams of being with my mother. Although it is quite a controversial topic, there are circumstances where there would not be so much harm as one may think, feel, or believe. Plus, this offers a chance for better teaching the child how to better satisfy their eventual partners. In a tweet of Chris's from 2019, which he posted while role-playing as one of his OCs, Magichan, he said, "Admittingly, a waifu I had long ago, while they were still developing before Christine came around, were Robert and Barbara. Barbara was more of a guilty pleasure waifu, while Robert was quite a successful model amongst others in Dimension 1218. The reactions those posts got, along with his understanding of basic morality, however tenuous, let Chris know loud and clear that he could not be sharing any details about his affair with Barb with the outside world. No. However, his resolve wouldn't last very long, and he felt gripped by the urge to talk about it. He also felt gripped by something else, but if I think about...
Jesus Christ, why are you gonna make that joke? Oh, I feel a bit sick. Oh man. Oh, I don't really know what to comment on at the moment, but I just, it's just like shivers. It's awful.
It too much, I'll puke all over my desk. On the 2nd of July, he exchanged a few DMs with a troll of his called Sean, or the WCM, which read as follows. I'm actually feeling really good right now. I hit the hay during the 10 o'clock hour last night. I had an extensive and lucidly clear dream, and I didn't wake up until about 4:30 a.m. I know why I'm getting much better quality sleep. It's been so for the past week. I have a sex partner. She has been very satisfactory. Her identity needs to remain a strict secret, and this is a mutual, genuine affection. I'm finally getting the long overdue experience, and she's helping me explore. Since we've started the ship progress with the first intercourse last Sunday, we're mainly...
Right, so he obviously hasn't or that they have. I don't know if I think someone mentioned them in the they context. I don't know what their pronouns are, but so they have not had any sort of relationship experience from what I gather from this, and so have sought to an individual who they are close to and perhaps in like a vulnerable state. Am I getting that right? He did go to jail, but got let go. Oh, jeez. Well, I mean, they did say allegedly in this, but it was kind of like a very sort of very strong allegedly. I don't buy it myself. This is absolutely disgusting. Do you know whether he got away with it? I don't think so, no.
Still exploring the options and teaching each other up to when we find what works best. She is physically older than I am, considerably fragile, but she has great inner strength and soul power. The message is followed by one of those custom emoji things depicting Chris with a satisfied smile. When asked about how old she is, Chris replies that he can't be too specific, but that this mysterious lady friend of his is physically older. A day later, Chris talks about having bought a massage oil that he'd be trying out with this unknown woman. On the 10th, there are a few messages about a sheer gown called a negligee, which Chris repeatedly calls negligent, that he got from Adam and Eve, an adult store that he's a known client of. He tells Sean that he's planning to wear it to this next bout of fun with his partner. The next time a conversation between them got around to this topic was on the 14th, when Chris decided to share a few details about his partner. He stated that she was over 50, gray-haired, blue-eyed, and shorter than he was. Sean's messages read like he already suspected it was Barb, since after Chris confirmed his partner was in their 70s, he said, "Damn, so close to your mother's age." As time went on, keeping the information to himself was becoming too much to bear. He just wanted to tell the world about his new love. On the 25th, he sent a screenshot to one of his trolls of a Watch Mojo video he was watching called Top 10 Hottest Anime Moms Ever. It was only somewhere between the 27th and 28th.
So he's got a network of individuals who I imagine are kind of like fake friends with them. Fake friends with Chris. Is that right? That sounds very sort of in keeping with like the idea of mate crime. Like, we do have a video sort of coming up after this where we're gonna chat about mate crime. So it's interesting how the dots have connected. Is that how they sort of get the information out of them? Or sort of making friends, sort of fake friends? Yeah. I think he needs therapy. It's not healthy behavior. I mean, he like, from what I know of them, they definitely need some like supportive care, that is for sure. Like, degenerate behavior doesn't really surprise me. I rarely have a reaction to it. I spent many years on the dark side of the internet growing up. It's an attention grab, surely. Why is he doing this? You can't blame it on autism. This is just him doing this. I don't think they've necessarily said that they've like blamed it on autism. I think it's kind of it's a piece of like the story, I think, but it's not like the central thing that kind of people talk about. I don't think it's definitely like some form of like delusion, or, you know, I'm not a psychologist. I can't really say, of course, but I mean, there is going to be some like pretty significant effects if you are so like socially isolated and you get most of your interaction with people online who sort of coax you to do things and sort of troll you and engage in this kind of mate crime behavior. Like, I can see why people empathize with it, because, you know, obviously I don't think they are all with it in terms of like understanding like the greater context of stuff like this. But, you know, I think it's just kind of like a prolonged delusion to some degree. You know, I used to have delusion when I was younger, but it was mostly to like boost my self-esteem when I was, you know, experiencing a lot of bullying and sort of humiliation from others in my school, you know. But it's not something that sort of traveled, you know, I took with me into adulthood, that is for sure. Not something that I necessarily took onto like internet life either. But then again, I do have a good social circle. I've had like experiences with dating and relationships. I've got like a pretty stable family, no real sort of issues in terms of like money and stuff. So I suppose it might be a bit sort of a different circumstance, you know. Are you watching the video I sent then? I will do it at some point, Pedro, but I just wanted to watch this one today. I've got it in the backlog. He's got to be the greatest comedian who ever lived. I don't think that they're necessarily doing it for like to be a comedian. I think it's just some really, really strong delusion that people are kind of enforcing. That's my sort of analysis of the situation.
8th, that an outright confession was to be made to none other than Isabella Loretta Janke, a can of worms in her own right, one that I've covered in a past video. In this call, he decided to come clean and tell Janke these things.
How did you approach her?
Approached her with care and caution.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a time approach. So I just gave her comfort and talked with her, and we just branched out slow and steady, and then I encouraged her positively, let her make the first move. She wanted to do it. And
She did? Really? She made the first move?
Yeah.
Their conversation goes on, but the gist of it is that Chris copped to everything he was doing in full, and just outright said, "Yep, me and my mom, we've been rolling around in the mud like pigs." In text messages he later exchanged with the owner of Kiwi Farms, Null, he reiterated this information, but with a few extra details. After referring to what he does with his mom as a romp in the hay and an extensive cuddle, Chris claims that the 8 guys who had been there before, including his father, Bob, were not doing it right. In Virginia, what Chris did to his mom is a Class 5 felony that can be punishable with up to 10 years behind bars. And it's worth mentioning, Barb was already behaving very strangely, zombie-like as Chris described, which led many to speculate she was unable to even consent. Whether that was the case or not, a day...
That's an interesting sort of aspect to that. When I say interesting, it's horrible. Like, it's definitely not a good thing, but yeah, I mean, not good. It's not looking good.
A day or so after the information came to light, the police did a wellness check at their house, relocated Barb to a senior care hospital, and issued an emergency protective order to keep Chris away from her. Over the course of the following day, news about what Chris had done caught on like wildfire on social media, while he had to sleep in his van for the night. Null, who up until that point was trying to help Chris and even trying to get him money coming from a GoFundMe page that he'd set up for Chris, gave up on him after discovering that Chris had embezzled $750 from Barb's bank account. What Chris did, sending himself money from Barb's account, constituted a violation of the protective order, and the police were promptly notified. On the 1st of August, Chris got arrested and sent to jail, eventually being transferred to the Central Virginia Regional Jail, where he spent the next 20 months. Many celebrated, believing this to be the first step leading to Chris being permanently institutionalized, bringing an end to his recent reign of terror. As far as
I mean, I think this person needs to get some really intensive psychological help, you know. I initially subscribed, but you have way too much content every day. It bogs my YouTube and me down. Wish you luck, though. Oh, thanks. I think. Maybe not. Why? Yeah, it's really hard to believe him when he's prone to delusions. Maybe he's lying for attention. Your facial reactions to this whole mess are amusing and understandable. Yeah, I don't really know what else to... It's just my genuine thoughts about this, my feelings. It's not the most comfortable video, I would say.
Everyone was concerned, there was no chance Chris would get away with this. I mean, he admitted to it. The jail saga was going to seal the book of Chris Chan for good, and now it was only a matter of observing Chris quietly withering away in his cell until he eventually got transferred to a mental hospital that would end up being his final resting place. In its own twisted way, it was the fairy tale ending that Chris kind of deserved. He's just not fit to be in the general public. Regardless of how satisfied people were to see Chris behind bars, he was still very much a person of interest. Soon after his arrest, someone from 4chan's random board claimed to have stolen the license plate off of Chris's car. That same month, Chris made his first court appearance, in which, according to a local news article written about it...
Why do people do that? Why do people do this stuff? Like, just kind of like igniting the fire. It's crazy. Like, it's doesn't really matter what this person is like or what they've done. Like, why do people just feel the need to like harass people who obviously have pretty major psychological issues? Craziness. Why did they let him go? It doesn't make sense. I think that's what people are saying. Like, it's not like people are worried. Like, it's not a good thing. But we don't really know what's gone on sort of behind the scenes. Maybe they have had like quite a bit of psychological support, and a lot of this stuff seems to be highly speculative in a lot of ways. Hello, Irene. Welcome to the stream.
He interrupted the court proceedings to loudly exclaim he was famous on the internet, stomping his feet and demanding that they give him his belongings that were still at the house. Your Honor, I'm a niche internet micro-celebrity, and I was going goblin mode. Later in August, a segment aired on Tucker Carlson Tonight, covering Chris's arrest and how he could potentially be placed in a female jail. This marks one of the biggest pieces of media exposure that Chris has ever gotten. To make matters worse, as people were going around Chris's dwellings and scavenging for items they could resell on eBay, someone decided to go to his house, commonly referred to as the temple. However, when this person got there, they found a lot more than a mere artifact. Barb herself was back at the house, which was shocking since most people presumed that she would stay in hospice care for a while, or some kind of clinic, given her obviously deteriorated state of mind. Meanwhile, after begging for money so that he could buy things from the jail commissary and pay off his jail debt, Chris's next correspondence with the outside world had him comparing himself to Andy Warhol and Jesus Christ. Perhaps sensing that verbally expressing this perceived likeness wasn't enough, Chris urge the reader to use a visual aid. Feel free to take any unaltered original photograph of my body's face, neck, and shoulder and chest area where I was not wearing the glasses. Then simply alter the photo to show a naturally growing beard, mustache, and sideburns. Now place that photo next to any image of Jesus on or off the cross. Compare. Look deep into my eyes and photograph. See for yourself. People have actually followed his instructions to very mixed results. It's more like Jesus with Downs than Jesus. Extending his analogy.
You don't need to say that, man. That's not a very PC way to approach that. Yeah, I mean, obvious states of intense delusion. Trying to understand things through a very sort of deluded set of eyes, I think. Chris Chan said sexual things about his mom for years, unfortunately. Oh. I don't think Jesus did that to his mother. It's a stretch. Yeah, I mean, it's blatantly obvious that there is some pretty intense delusions which are going on here. Like, this person needs to be getting some really intense psychological support, and they should definitely not be on the internet for sure. I instantly want not to follow Jesus. Jesus.
Further, Chris also compared Null to Judas since he was responsible for notifying the police of the embezzlement. Curiously, he also spoke of what he did to Barbara from the perspective of God. Emmanuel, God above all other gods and goddesses, and one of my mentors, herself, had deemed me to heal, cleanse, and clear Barbara of all her past sins and regrets, and improve her abilities directly and personally as her goddess. We mainly cuddled, soul bonded, and talked. Consentful and emotionally and mentally supportive in healing, I did as I had done for and with a chosen few back in Israel over 2,000 years ago in cleansing them. Look, I'll be the first to say I'm no religious scholar, but I'm pretty sure in the Old Testament God wasn't cuddling with the Israelites. Also in September, a video from 2020 was leaked in which Chris is channeling Randy Stair, yes, the spree killer who thought he was a character from Danny Phantom, calling Randy his friend, which only makes sense given how parallel their delusions are, regardless of how radically different they manifest it. By the way, new video about Randy Stair on this channel very soon. The court appearance that month got delayed, and some fans ended up showing up to the temple, this time actually recording the experience.
Is Chris home?
I don't understand.
My friend Chris, I was just wondering if Chris was here.
No.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to bother.
By October, Barb was turning 80,
Wait,
while Bob had already been
someone
dead.
who actually knew them, or was that one of these online people who just, obviously harassing? Ah, my God. It is it's a really poor representation of autism, I would say. I don't really need to say that, do I? It's pretty there. Jesus can keep his creepy hands away from me. Oh yeah, Chris Chan has also defended Chris Bundy in the past. Jesus Christ. It sounded like she knew the guy. I'm very tentative around this because, from my albeit very limited knowledge on this issue, it does very much seem like this whole LOLCOW thing around Chris Chan is related to other people sort of pushing themselves into their life, you know, maybe some mate crime related things. Like I'm definitely not like speaking on, you know, whether this person did anything wrong or not. Like it seems very apparent and they have gone to jail and such, but it's, you know, why do people feel the need to like stoke the fire in this way when they know somebody is, you know, not really like psychologically stable in that way? It's not a good thing. I don't really like this whole LOLCOW culture stuff. A lot of people don't represent autistic people nicely. Well, I mean, I suppose you bring in an important point there, because, you know, there has for a long time in the past been a pretty heavy stereotype around autistic people not having empathy, and particular sort of religious groups. You know, I've heard first-hand accounts of this and sort of seen some stuff around it, like sort of painting autistic people as being like devil childs, like inherently sort of evil and touched by the devil. I mean, we've seen that whole Autism Speaks video before as well, haven't we? And then moving on into sort of later, you know, sort of more of a modern time, then we got a wave of this kind of counter movement to a lot of the ideas that we had about autism. So it started off being this kind of, you know, autistic people are evil and autistic people don't have empathy. And then people went the opposite way. And then people are saying autistic people are like, you know, innocent, kind of good souls that can't lie, and that they're always honest and they're always truthful and they always have very, very good morals and things of that nature, which is completely wrong. Like, I do find that we tend to stick to our internal beliefs a lot stronger than most people, but it's not necessarily the beliefs that is accepted by the rest of society. So these morals don't always align with what most people believe about things. There is no correlation between autism and morality, autism and you know, criminality and such. Yeah, I did want to ask a little bit separate to this topic. I did put out a poll recently about like the amount of content that I've put out, and like obviously we've had someone sort of dip in to express that they didn't like that I was producing so much content. What do you guys think? Because I know, like you the sort of regulars, you guys here that I see on the stream, you do seem to sort of like my content. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that maybe I'm putting too much stuff out? Maybe I should sort of rein it back a little bit. Maybe have a couple of days where I don't put stuff out. Because I'm just, like, honestly, I'm just trying to like take YouTube very seriously and sort of, you know, put out some content, you know, some stuff. Hello, Sydney. Welcome to the community. If I don't want to watch something, I just scroll past it. No big deal. Yeah. I mean, I can understand, because, you know, sometimes when you subscribe, you sort of click like the notification bell and then it goes off and it kind of dings. And I think it dings about like 3 times sort of throughout the day. I think that's what I've read. So it only really go off and ding like once a day, but maybe that's like too much for people. I told them off and said that people like your content and get help from it. Do whatever matches your mental well-being. Thank you. Love the regular content. It's part of my routine now. Thanks, Jake. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand that. I mean, just like turn the notification bell off if it's annoying, or like don't watch my videos and then let other videos sort of fill up your feed. That's kind of how it works. It's like if you're finding that your feed is full of my videos, it's probably because you're clicking on my videos and watching them. You know, if you click on other ones over time, and if you don't click on mine, then it'll kind of fade into obscurity. It really depends on what you click and what you watch. Anyway, let's get back to it, guys.
dead for 10 years. If understanding what's going on in Chris's mind is nigh impossible for people who are young and internet savvy, imagine what it must have been like for them. Chris wrote many letters during this month, the first of which had him resisting an attempt to convert to Islam. Despite his resistance, Chris eventually says he ordered a Quran from the jail commissary, though the likelihood of him actually reading it is pretty low. In his next letter, Chris requests more money and a pardon from Joe Biden himself. He also reveals that his jail conditions are pretty good, even though he complains about the chicken there being too dry.
Yeah. Pretty high levels of perhaps like obviously delusion, but also maybe like some level of narcissism, I would say. You know, I mean, this person obviously is pretty well known on the internet, but they seem to think they're like some kind of cult leader in a way. I think you need to be yourself, and if it's weighing in your mind, find a way to release it. Journal, vlog. Post if it helps, forget everyone else. I am actually thinking, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, posting more vloggy stuff, because that was kind of the stuff that I used to do. I do quite like making the presentation videos, but maybe it might be good to do just kind of a simple kind of sit down and talk kind of thing. Maybe that might be a good way of going about it. Some of the strangest serial killers and criminals happen to be autistic or believed to be. I don't think it should represent autism. I'm sure something can be gained from studying those individuals. It's interesting that you say that. I've seen some stuff, you know, from on the internet, sort of researching around like autism and criminality. It does seem that there are some, you know, particular individuals who have like really, really strong delusions as well. Like, obviously it's not a correlation, but I do know what you mean. It does tend to be that these individuals do have some pretty like strong, very unique sort of motives and delusions which kind of come with it. I'm saying delusion a lot today. Chris Chan brought all of this upon himself. Yeah, I mean, I think the internet has a lot to do in this as well, you know, and perhaps like the lack of support, I'd say. Again, I'm not saying that that's reasons for the behavior, because this person is a consenting adult who has the ability to make decisions, and they've done some pretty reprehensible things, that is for sure.
On the 25th, he goes further into detail about how he's being treated, writing, "The staff treat me well enough. Then I've experienced the attitudes and bad habits from some of the real jerk-offs and really noisy neighbors after my body was relocated from medical to booking. But the food is mostly good, the commissary has good items on offer, and I've enjoyed the rec room a few times. This facility is 2 out of 5 stars. In the introductory portion of the letter, Chris actually mentions that Barb has written to him, but I haven't been able to find any further information on the communication between them. Just as November started up, Chris had a phone call, the contents of which have been uploaded to YouTube. In that same call, he draws parallels between his early life and Jesus's.
I mean, I foreknew and foresaw that I was going to end up in jail anyway. It was just popular amongst the other timelines.
On the 8th, he explains in a letter that soul bonding is as far as he went with Barb, which is as close to cunning doublespeak as Chris's mind can conjure. On the same day, Chris made a drawing titled Jesus Christ Chan Sonichu, which is beautiful. It should be in every Catholic church.
Is that like a reference to like the film Avatar? Do you know when they like lock their ponytails together? Chris Chan's pre-existing issues, the internet lack of support, and enabling by his parents all did this. Well, it really highlights the need to, you know, support individuals through this. Like, yeah, oh my god, Eek, this stuff is scary, 100%. I would say that serial killers are also psychopaths. I don't think that all of them are necessarily that. I think that there is a pretty large portion of them who are, you're right. Mostly because they can kind of get away with it, because they have that kind of emotional detachment, sort of ability to sort of manipulate people, not necessarily as much sort of emotional. They have a lot more sort of emotional stability than most humans. It doesn't actually mean that the majority of psychopaths are actually criminals, because I don't think they are. I think most of the people we'd consider to have sort of psychopathy tend to be like in the medical fields around like surgery, or some sort of positions of power where they have like control over people. That seems to be something. But I think sociopaths can be as well, and also people who have some pretty intense delusions sometimes. You know, the difference between psychopath and sociopath is psychopath is like a neurodevelopmental condition, so you're born with that, whereas sociopath is sort of learnt behaviour related things. She's your darkest string yet, but I love it. Well, I'm wanting to really distinguish myself a little bit by tackling that, you know, pretty much as I can, not really trying to shy away from too much stuff, because I do think there is a tendency when we are talking about autism to sometimes be like, well, careful, of course, because it can be a very sort of touchy kind of individual subject, but I also think it kind of stops us from really sort of, I think it's good to talk about things, you know, that's always been my kind of internal feelings about, you know, pretty much everything that the autistic community considers controversial. I think we should really be trying to talk and understand, you know, those topics and really try and make some bridges with the outside world sometimes. And also, I think it's important to cover mainstream things like this, because I don't think that a lot of people get a lot of input from like the autistic lived experience, which I think is definitely needed when it comes to things like this.
Across the country. After Chris got another continuance on his trial, Barb got in a car crash after failing to yield the right of way. Which isn't even surprising. In fact, my only real question is, how was she even on the road at all? How had her driver's license not been suspended at that point? As a result of her accident, she got 2 broken ribs and a concussion, and her car was totaled. In a letter later that same month, Chris claimed he already knew this would happen, and that the only reason she didn't immediately pass as a consequence of the accident was because he cleansed her. I guess you could say that. On the 6th of December, he makes a series of prophecies concerning whoever he considers the apostles of himself, or maybe apostles of his mom, considering she's supposedly the God that's above God. It's really impossible to understand what the hell he even believes in at this point, but regardless, his prophecies are mostly rehashes of Pentecostal Christian things, but filtered through Christian brain rot. During the merge, Christianese for the rapture, people will start speaking in tongues, and many people will suddenly disappear. Then, the veil that hides the truth will be lifted, and people's brains will start to burn from being overloaded with information. Yeah. Somewhere in there, he also says animals will start talking, and I'm not quite sure why or how that plays into the merge, but maybe it's just like him wanting to talk to Sonichu. He further develops his theory that his healing saved Barb, saying that the reason he's in jail is because he took her sins onto himself, and now he's paying.
Okay. I mean, the delusions are just, you know, they're trying to pretty much make themselves feel better for stuff, or at least like show the world that they haven't done anything wrong. There is some mad sort of mental gymnastics going into this. Jesus Christ. I keep saying Jesus is pretty much my expression when it comes to things that I find, you know, a bit crazy. But in this case, it's kind of fitting for the whole narrative of the story. This sounds like someone who's on the magic stuff, if you know what I mean. Well, it's the psychosis state they were in. Yeah, I'm not saying that this person has, like, you know, they obviously have a lot of stuff wrong with them. Proud of you for being willing to cover more controversial topics. Well, I think we need to, you know. For anybody watching out there, I did mention a little bit about autism and empathy. Autism does not, you know, there is no correlation between autistic people and lacking empathy. There is typically like 2 types of empathy sort of talked about within the literature. The adaptive element and the cognitive element. The cognitive element is something that we can struggle with, and that's basically understanding people's emotional states based on indirect cues. So if people don't tell you, but you can kind of pick up on those emotions. But the adaptive element, which is what we sort of consider in sort of the mainstream kind of lay perspective, is actually what empathy is, which is acting appropriately based on people's emotions and you know, kind of doing the right thing and such. And autistic people definitely do not struggle with that. Although, and speaking in general, so there might be some autistic people who do also not show a lot of adaptive empathy, but that's not a correlation between the two.
for them. In the same letter, he starts writing in gibberish, which he refers to as authentic akashic. Akashic? Is this even a real fucking word? Oh, it is. Huh. Well, you know what? You learn something new every day. In the same month, he would update the 10 Commandments, seeing as times have changed since they were first created. And according to Chris, his updates will help human beings better understand the practices of magic, psychic powers, safer sexual intercourse, and soul bonding. Though he hasn't finished his update yet, he mentioned that he planned on making it into the 11 Commandments, which in my opinion, just isn't as punchy as the 10. In January, he made a couple of calls from jail, both of which have been archived and uploaded to YouTube. In the first one, he reveals he's been trying to get a hold of Barb to no avail, as the 3 times he's called her, she never picked up. Because of his concern with Barb, he asked the person he's talking to call in a well...
How are these being uploaded to YouTube? How is this happening? I do not understand. Thank you very much for the super chat, Irene. I don't know, group hug, but no touch. Thank you. Oh, yep, I have hyper empathy. I think a lot of us can be very empathic, especially to sort of different or, you know, individuals who go through sort of difficult times in life as well, because we quite often do disproportionately experience a lot of negative things. It doesn't necessarily mean that that always results in us having more empathy. Sometimes it doesn't, but I think in a lot of cases for most people it definitely does, in my experience. You know, tend to be a bit more, tend to make a little bit less judgments as well about people, sort of on the surface. Try and get to understand people a little bit more before sort of drawing judgments and such. But that's a generalization, of course. You know, hello, I'm late again, story of my life. Hello. Some people got inside information. Also, sometimes people hack the police database to get this information. Jesus. Bloody. Well, there is no reason for the public to have this information. This person just needs to be stopped from using the internet, and people just need to leave this situation alone and let like the police and let like psychologists sort this out. I suppose maybe there might be some negligence, I guess, maybe from the police or psychologists that I don't know about, but you know, we definitely don't need to be covering this. Like, I mean, it's very sort of hypocritical, I suppose, me streaming a video about it, but I mean, I'm definitely not like pushing it out to more people. I think it's pretty much one of the, as a lot of people have said, a pretty well known about thing in the world of YouTube. Nobody would claim I lacked empathy in childhood. I was a bit extreme. I struggled to know when other kids were like affected negatively by my behavior, but once people pointed it out to me, I was almost like overly empathic, I would say. You know, trying to make sure they're all right, feeling bad about myself particularly.
Wellness check on her, since she's probably not doing well after Chris's departure. Not that she was doing great when he was there either. On the 18th of January, in another letter, after declaring his intent to go right back to the temple as soon as he's out, which at this point many people found impossible and thought would never happen, he revisited the old topic of his commandments. And I think now is as good a time as any to go into their actual contents. At this point, Chris had 15 of them down, though of these first 15, because yes, there will be more, we only got to see 11. The commandments of neo-spiritual Christianity, the official name of his religion, are mostly vague, secularized copies of the original ones. He barely made any changes to the more universally accepted ones, such as thou shalt not kill, don't steal, stuff like that. However, a couple of notable changes are that adultery is completely okay, well, and good, and that you are strictly forbidden from commenting mean things online. I mean, if nothing else, you can tell that Chris definitely wrote these. In the same letter, he expresses that the pieces of fan fiction involving Sonichu that stray too far away from certain core elements of the canon are making him very upset. So he lays out a few ground rules for them to keep them readable for children under 14. It seems like he's actually forgotten how many times he's put stuff into the Sonichu comics that violate these rules, but with the lack of effort and forethought he treats the comics with, it doesn't really surprise me. A day later, he added to these rules, saying that no authentic Sonichu issue was allowed to cover any of the events surrounding and following his arrest, and depicting Chris as overweight, or merely mentioning it, would instantly render a story not canon, toxic, and fake. In February, there's yet another continuance, and after turning 40 years old, Chris gets transferred to the Western State Hospital after being deemed incompetent to stand trial. Some people are of the opinion that despite his mental...
He's 40 years old? I was under the impression that sort of in his late sort of 20s. I mean, sort of looking at the individual, I suppose maybe that makes sense, but did not expect that. The person has been mass stalked for 16 plus years. There's going to be sources on everything, especially this. My empathy is like an ocean. I'm drowning in it and I need to learn to swim more. I wouldn't say anyone else. I lead with super compassion and having to be too understanding, as I say, which harmed me. I struggle, yet gotten better at not super harming myself. Yeah. I think a lot of us can learn through life that a lot of situations that we get into, it's kind of like always our fault, you know? We're so used to, having a different perspective and not particularly fitting into social norms that we do quite often, experience that kind of, people telling us off or othering us and such, and that kind of, at least for me, it has transferred into adulthood a bit. It's something that I've been working on the past couple of years, but yeah, it's not too hard for me to like stand up for myself, like when it comes to like strangers and like people that I don't know very well, acquaintances, but people that I really, really care about. I can often, take a lot of the blame onto myself and really struggle to kind of express negative feelings towards people. This reminds me of my brain sometimes, if it makes sense. I doubt this story is, that's how my brain operates sometimes. Not sure I know what you mean. Husky correction. This person has been willingly documented his own life for more than 16 years. I think there definitely is an aspect of that, but from what I can see, like someone like there's definitely a lot of people involved in this who are stoking this. I mean, just going by the fact that people call Christiana LOLCOW, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Issues, Chris knew what he'd done and should be punished by the full extent of the law, while others say he was better fit for being permanently institutionalized. Either way, it seems like everything was going according to plan, and activity died down significantly until May when he returned to jail. As a result of the transfer, we get the only picture of Chris Chan taken for the entirety of the year 2022, and he doesn't look too happy in it. This may or may not have to do with the fact that, as he alleged in a letter from later that year, on the day he was transferred, the staff pinned him down aggressively, which reminded him of his childhood trauma of being held down by 4 or 5 people at school. However, since we only ever get Chris's point of view, we don't know if the staff was given a reason to do that to him, or if it happened at all. On the 6th of May, we got a few drawings.
I can imagine that might be something related to like meltdown of that nature. Yeah, I've heard some stories of people, particularly in childhood, going through the school system, autistic people who are kind of forcefully restrained in that way. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. I mean, unless you are like a trained professional and there is some real threats either to that person or to other people around them, it's definitely not a good thing to do. Ugh.
Chris mailed to one of his followers, and 3 days later, another letter was sent in which Chris mentioned that the Sonic.exe creepypasta is officially real and leaking into our dimension. I already know that he believes that all fictional worlds are real, but it consistently surprises me how even the most ridiculous pieces of media get roped into this fantasy, and Chris never doubts it for a second. Due to his lifelong resentment for being considered mentally ill, Chris refuses to reveal where he was while away from jail. He also denies that he did anything to Barb, and in a passage in which he tells a biographical story of Barb's life, he makes a few claims about her that I don't recall him having ever made. For example, he says that she married his dad because he had a house and that she was emotionally abusive, threatening to do something drastic when Chris announced he was going to a convention in another state. Also, adding context to the accusations levied against Chris, he claims that all the way back in 2012, when he paid for the services of Mia Hamm, the Cherokee woman, to no longer be a virgin with rage, Barb supposedly told him that she would have done it herself. I should note that due to his lack of social acumen and extensively documented propensity towards lying, it could easily be the case that Barb said something more along the lines of she would have dated him herself if she weren't his elderly mother. However weird that still may be, it's not exactly a proposition like Chris is making it out to be, but you know what, I mean, it totally could be real. There are some other notable moments in the May 11th letter, such as his claim that Jacob Sockness, one of his more recent trolls, was responsible for cursing the world with the pandemic. And in a random pivot, Chris says, I had foreknown World War III as why My Little Little Pony Generation 5 being manifested in 2020 to 2025 was premature. In the same letter, Chris reveals the last known commandment of neo-spiritual Christianity, which commands that no one shall be pressured into having relations. In June, he gets optimistic about his release, expressing in multiple letters that he believes it's coming sooner rather than later. Eventually, he came up with a good excuse for having gone to the hospital, saying that he just went there to get educated on courtroom proceedings. Which, yeah, I mean, that's definitely really true, right? That's why you go to the hospital. After repeating his denial of ever having been with Barbara, he goes on to explain what the soul bonding he did with her meant, only to say a bunch of vague, schizophrenic nonsense to obfuscate it. On June 5th, he makes a self-portrait of himself and Barb, surrounded by miscellaneous Sonichu-related characters. The isolated misery of Chris really shines through on this one. His case gets...
Isn't, like, Sonic, like, quite an icon for, like, a lot of autistic children? I'm pretty sure that I've seen a lot of stuff around that. Like, it used to be... Minecraft used to be, like, a pretty... I think I've seen some, like, people doing videos about, like, cringe compilations of Minecraft kids. Sort of at the cons, Minecons, or whatever they're called. Pokemon was, like, a really big thing for me when I was younger. Never really got into Sonic that much, but apparently Chris Chan has combined Sonic with Pikachu. Craziness. My Little Pony. I think that could be another one that I've seen. It's not really like... I have also seen some stuff around like Bluey, that kind of, I think, cartoon that's on all, like, the kids' channels. I think some autistic people find it to be, you know, quite sort of safe and comforting. I imagine that there's a quite large amount of jokes and such being made towards this kind of special interest, I suppose. Sonic is RE, popular amongst ASD. Got a few Sonic t-shirts. I'd be forever reminded of this looking at them. Oh, maybe try and sever that association. This is like Sonic and Bluey like. You like Bluey, Tracy? I think that there was a girl that I was talking to, an autistic girl that I was talking to who liked Bluey. I mean, it's not really my kind of thing. I'm more of the type to watch like Baki and Dragon Ball Z and like those kind of shows. I very much like the fighting animes. I've always really gravitated towards those, but makes kind of sense, you know. Being an ex-combat athlete, it was quite important to me. Those shows give me a lot of motivation. I did quite often, you know, sort of visualize myself as being those characters, but it never really crossed over into like real life. You know, it was kind of like something that I visualized. It was like, oh, I am like a Naruto character or like a Dragon Ball Z character. This is when I was younger. You know, and that kind of gave me some motivation, especially when I was going through like the sort of the depths of depression in secondary school. Avatar: The Last Airbender. I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's such a good series. I've watched Legends of Korra as well. That's a pretty good one. I think it can be a quite a big like source of escapism for us, having these kind of fictional worlds. It was for me, and it has been for me, and it's something that I've sort of distanced myself from recently, and I'm thinking maybe you know, considering like the amount of comfort that these kind of fictional worlds give me, I think maybe I should try and sort of engage with it a bit more. You know, it's quite relaxing. I like Adventure Time. Yeah, Adventure Time's good.
Another continuance on the 9th, and a few days later, Chris claims that Barbara is no longer living at the temple. Though he doesn't say where she is or how he found out, he claims he'll be making a sacrifice to go home and clean since it's vacant. He then confirmed that his lawyer had been telling him he was going to go free soon, and that the police never even interrogated Barb due to her impaired mental state. Speaking of impaired mental states, Chris adds to the justifications for what he did to Barbara, saying that his cleansing had something to do with her eventually returning to the Rosachu form. He also says that he had visions of her going to jail instead of him for supposedly being negligent and mistreating the animals they had at their house, emotionally abusing Chris, and appropriating his SSI payments. While it's not hard to believe the first two, as far as I can tell, the third one is mainly projection, since Chris was the one managing their finances, if we can call what he did managing. So much so that one of his final acts before being jailed was embezzling from her bank account. And since we're on the topic of Chris's lies, it also seems he lied about Barb no longer being at the house and is simply trying to get her into a nursing home, but without any success thus far. On July 22nd, he specifies that the reason she's still there is simply because she refuses to leave, and since he hasn't been legally deemed as impaired, there's nothing they can do about it. Because of her lack of cooperation, Chris is increasingly upset about potentially never seeing his mom again, presuming that without the care that a nursing home would provide her due to her very advanced age, she's going to end up passing away before he's out of jail. Indirectly, by acknowledging that she's not all there and saying things like she's no longer able to drive, he's also suggesting that she wasn't really able to consent, whether he admits that happened or not. Chris's case got sent to a grand jury, where he would be tried for a felony. Afterwards, his lawyer filed for an autism disorder deferred disposition for Chris's charge, which basically means that, from my understanding, a suspended sentence, more commonly known as a probation, would be applied to the case. On the
Let's say this is an interesting part. Like, do you guys think that this is... I mean, it doesn't really seem like this is necessarily like an autism thing. They definitely have like some pretty sort of strong delusions and a pretty sort of shaky moral compass at best. But what do you guys think about this? Like, allows a court to defer or dismiss a criminal case where the defendant has been diagnosed with autism or an intellectual disability, and the court finds by clear and convincing evidence that the criminal conduct is caused by a direct or substantial relationship to the person's disorder or disability. Oh, so we really have a get out of jail free card. Yeah, I don't know if this is... I mean, it's got to be a case-by-case basis, doesn't it? Because, like, you know, I mean, it's... it's not necessarily... I don't know how I feel about that being a thing. I knew you were going to go there. No, it isn't. Yeah, there's definitely something more than autism at play here. I mean, I could definitely see it being dismissed in terms of, like, you know, perhaps having some significant, like, psychosis or delusions, but it doesn't seem necessarily in this case that... I mean, I don't know. Do they have an intellectual disability? Consent for me makes sense, yes or no? Yeah, I'm not sure.
10th of August, Chris's case is sealed, and his lawyer explains why. The unique intense interest in this case, including inaccurate online disinformation, required this infrequently used remedy. In our current age of unregulated online disinformation about almost anything and everyone, this remedy might be needed more than ever. To put it bluntly, his lawyer was mad at the trolls, not that the case being sealed was all that effective at keeping disinformation at bay. Since the very same month after a judge issued a transportation order, memes about Chris escaping started making the rounds on a massive scale. Later in August, the CWC Wiki experienced a heavy outage that would last for the next 2 months, which was kind of poetic given the case was just sealed. Apparently, this happened because the CWC Wiki and Kiwi Farms shared the same server, and when Kiwi Farms was taken down, the CWC Wiki came with it. The thing is, Kiwi Farms was also one of the main hubs of Chris Chan news and discussion, meaning the internet at large was now in the dark, apart from a few smaller communities that are scattered across the internet who were jumping through major hoops to keep track of what Chris was up to. Besides having to deal with the felony, Chris's money started getting garnished over unpaid debt. As far as what Chris was up to, well, he was drawing this month. I'm gonna gloss over most of these, but I have to make a caveat here to show you this one, wherein he meets himself from the past and takes this opportunity to accuse Megan, one of the few people to ever be genuinely nice and patient with him in his entire life, of swindling him, putting her in the same basket as the trolls who were tormenting him around that time. It really goes to show that no matter how different Chris has become as his mental state deteriorates, to his core, he's the same Chris with the same petty Chris thoughts. As 2022 came to a quiet end with radio silence on Chris's side of things, 2023 began with activity from users on Reddit. As soon as it started, a few unrelated people happened to check up on the temple to see how it was doing after such a long time elapsed since Chris's departure. The first one was on the 14th.
Random internet users coming to check on the house. Oh, we live in a messed up world here. Lawyers will use anything to get a client off. What I learned is the law, not about truth, but about who can scam and lie more. I'm jaded. I mean, there definitely is a case for, like, as I said, like psychosis and such, that makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't necessarily scream, this is an autism thing to me. Like, this is not normal autistic behavior, I don't think. But then again, I don't know if they've got like some other sort of disorders that are not speculative and are actually like official. I saw that in a good way of you going there. I had a sense, because I could read in the sense, maybe, because I kind of understand your type of thinking in a way. I think we can all like, I think there is sort of a common thread of sort of logic that we do have as autistic people, you know. So it's quite easy for me to like have conversations with other autistic people. It just kind of flows well. Like I can predict like a lot more with certainty, like how a conversation's gonna go. With like people who aren't autistic, it tends to be a little bit more kind of unknown, I guess. You know, a lot of aspects of potential miscommunication. Get where you're coming from on the subject. Schizophrenia often manifests as delusions. I think it can do, yeah. Oh God, not Reddit. Yep, that I definitely use myself, so I'll shut up. No, it's I think it. I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard many good things about Reddit, but you know, I don't really hear many good things about most social media platforms.
As someone on r/ChrisChan Sonichu posted about him and his friend going to the temple and scoping it out for a while until Barb came out to get some mail and went right back into the house. According to the post, she looks like a ghost, but was fully mobile and didn't show any signs of problems with her physical health. On the 22nd, someone else went there to take some pictures, which showed many of Chris's belongings had been thrown out, something he would undoubtedly be furious about if he knew. Meanwhile, the silence continued on Chris's end for the first 3 months of 2023. Things were quiet. Too quiet. Something had to be going on, and indeed, something was. Around 10 a.m. on the 27th of March, to the shock of everyone, Chris Chan was reportedly bonded out of custody, and a few hours later, the report was revised to say he'd been released. For all intents and purposes, Chris Chan was free to walk the earth. As expected, the internet exploded, in complete disbelief that what he did to Barb, and to a much lesser extent his issues with debt and embezzlement, were simply not enough to keep him institutionalized. The silence on his end is kept throughout most of April, with the exception of him drawing the cover of Sonichu number 82, which is a very strange decision given that the last issue before this one that was released was number 17. I don't have the slightest clue what led him to make this huge leap in the number, but given that doing completely incomprehensible things is Chris's forte, I'll try not to get too hung up on it. It's only in the first few days of May that he's actually seen again, emerging from the depths of the jailhouse and walking the streets like nothing happened. The first time he was seen in public again was at Walmart, looking significantly thinner and with his hair back to his natural brown color. According to someone who recorded a video of Chris at said Walmart, Chris asked for a flash drive and bought himself a new Nintendo Switch with God knows what money. It's unknown exactly where he resided at this point, with some people speculating that he was placed at a group home. The very next day, he was seen prowling in his natural habitat, a game shop, playing cards with people who were none the wiser. On the 3rd, more sightings take place, this time at another place he's known to frequent, the mall. For the time being, Chris remained without access to the temple or Barb, but people who visited it noticed that the lawn was being cared for, all but confirming that there were other people besides Barb frequenting the house and keeping it orderly. In the middle of the month, there were rumors going around that Chris
I need not to wear a Sonic t-shirt for the next few days, so this doesn't pop into my head again. Oh my God, stop following them around and recording them. Exactly my thoughts. Just leave it alone. This is not... I mean, they are, like, pretty significant sort of on the internet as, like, a personality, but, like, Jesus, guys. Reddit can be a strange place. That's true. Hello, girl who plays bass. Or girl plays bass, sorry.
had a new car. But again, it was a mystery how Chris could even afford that. At the end of May, we got witness testimony from a store clerk who had the pleasure of receiving Chris at his store and also happened to know who Chris was, who said that Chris was pacing around the place, talking to himself about things, and stinking of, as the clerk put it, pure shit, so much so that he had to breathe through his mouth. The image taken during Chris's stay at the store had a girl in the background who eventually found out she was in it and commented on it, saying he was taking ages in line as he was trying to find loose change all in his bag. I couldn't really smell him, so I guess I wasn't close enough, or all the essential oils in that store were clogging my nose. June of that year was uniquely quiet.
I mean, isn't one of, like, sometimes one of the side effects of schizophrenia, like issues with like hygiene and such. I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere. I did know someone actually from university who had like diagnosed schizophrenia. They were functional, but they definitely had auditory hallucinations and such. So I remember having quite a long conversation with them. I don't know, maybe it's like related to like executive function. But I also know that sometimes hygiene can be an issue for autistic people as well. Like it definitely was for me when I was younger. I mean, I didn't stink like that, but I don't know. I think it was something related to like the sensory issues that I experienced with the shower, and like sometimes I find like brushing my teeth to be like really painful. I still do it, but it did when I was a teenager. It was pretty difficult for me to kind of maintain that kind of hygiene. Yep, and even psychosis. Suzu says, I just joined and I'm very confused. What did he do? If it isn't hard to summarize. They're kind of accused of taking money from their parents and also taking advantage of them in a very unfortunate way, sort of physically, if you know what I mean. But apparently this individual, this Chris Chan, is like what the internet calls like a LOLCOW. So a lot of people kind of stalk and, follow this individual, and, obviously they're very well documented over the past 16 years, I think someone said. Psychosis also can be when lack of hygiene, yeah. Yes, it's part of the executive function, but there is a difference. I have issues with hygiene, it's definitely there monthly. Yeah, it tends to kind of, I'm pretty good with it nowadays. I mean, I've got to a point where it's like a pretty stable part of my routine. Use mango flavored toothpaste? No way! I've got mango flavored toothpaste as well. Is it the one from, is it the mango sorbet one from High Smile? Yes. I throw up when I brush my tongue. I do have a tongue scraper, but I haven't used it in a while. I should probably continue.
And there was only one sighting of Chris going to buy ice cream with two unknown women, none of which were Barb. The next time he was spotted was in July, with his hair freshly dyed blue, and he had actually moved locations. Apparently during the course of this month, Chris relocated from his usual stomping grounds to Lynchburg, Virginia, where he was spotted playing card games and stinking slightly less than usual. In August, the judge in charge of Chris's case entered for a dismissal of the Barb-related charge, basically meaning that he would get away with it. Meanwhile, someone spotted him at yet another Walmart and had a chat with him about Sonic, and once again, he was described as consistently talking to himself while he walks around. It was during this month that Chris slowly regained access to all of his electronics, judging from his Pokemon Go and PSN accounts getting reactivated and having some activity. And then he gets his computers back, at which point he gets back on Twitter and starts liking posts, one of which is lewd MLP art that I won't go into detail about to save you all and your sanity. It appears that he'd kept a lot of the art he made during this stint in jail, since on the 23rd, his very first social media post in over 2 years was a big dump onto his DeviantArt, containing pictures of everything he drew while locked up. A couple of days later, Chris's case was officially dismissed, which he celebrated by playing Street Fighter 6 on his brand new PS5. I still don't understand where this money is even coming from. Where is he getting these funds? Is he in contact with like Bitcoin dono whales? He also got back on his Xbox account and sent one of his private correspondents, Helena, a DM.
This person is literally like every single aspect of their life is just like consistently like up for the public. It's crazy. It's mad. Like the amount it's like the entire internet is just like stalking this one person. It's crazy. Like even like private conversations are leaked and talked about. Phone calls. People are taking pictures and videos of them. Like of this individual who is like obviously struggling massively with like some form of psychosis or delusions. Like, it's really gross. I mean, bar this circumstance, like this whole like LOLCOW culture stuff is really gross. Like, Truman Show stuff going on. Exactly. There's a bit of overlap between ASD and schizophrenia on their own. But the general difference is only autistic people tend not to have psychotic breaks. I think there's probably a lot more sort of differences between the two, but I see what you're saying. Someone can have ASD and go through psychosis as well, 100%. Yeah, I mean there's a pretty like strong crossover with autism and like other sort of mental illnesses, other sort of neurodivergencies. I don't understand the fascination with this guy. No, I don't. Yeah, there is some like mango flavored toothpaste stuff. You can get them flavored. I mean, it's pretty good.
Which was released. In it, he said, "Sorry for not responding, but I've been keeping a low profile as possible. Anyways, I'm not mad at either of you at all, and my online return is coming. And I allow you all to share this, as I know you're likely to do. I also enclose the following photo. Thank Critical for the really divinely inspired G Fuel. Be safe and well, you and everyone, with blessings." So I guess he's a fan of the moist Critical G Fuel flavor. Based. With his electronics coming back into play and him being comfortable enough somewhere that he could buy something as expensive and easily stealable as a PS5, some people got to wondering if he'd actually return to his house. I mean, there's no way that could be the case though, right? Certainly the cops or whoever was in charge of keeping Barb safe ensured that he could never get back there, right? Well, unfortunately, it wasn't long before Chris's car was seen on the house's driveway. There was a point in time in which people were laughing at the prospect of Chris ever being able to return to his house, but only because it seemed so unlikely, so ridiculous. It's unknown if Barb was there during Chris's presence, but this is as bad an omen as possible. It's also during this month that we get into more details about the women Chris was seen with after his release. In particular, the one called Flutter. During a visit of his to CVS caught on CCTV, Chris can be seen being generally touchy, even hugging and kissing her. The nature of this relationship was still a mystery at that point, but at the very least, we can be thankful that this woman wasn't his mom. For quite some time, the last video featured on Chris's channel was a clip of the infamous troll Anthony Legato screaming the name Julie, which is one of Chris's, I guess, ex-girlfriends, you could say. However, at the end of September, the video was taken down, signifying Chris had also regained access to his YouTube account. His Facebook was then unprivated, he got a new Discord username, and everything pointed to his imminent return and total CWC victory. Said and done, on the 16th of October 2023, his prophesied second coming took place in a video titled Jesus Christ Chan Sonichu Prime Resurrected and Returned, and it's about as glorious and theatric as we all imagined.
City of Quickville, on the road to the city of Quickville, the city of Quickville. Perfect.
Though Chris claims he edited this video himself, the semi-competent green screen usage has been speculated to be the work of a helper of Chris's, who is a member of the Praetors, who is also responsible for running the official CWC Mart, which Chris advertises for in the description. The CWC Mart itself is an Etsy store where a number of items are listed, like an official Chris Chan Sonichu medallion, a Chris Chan 2021 Lost Commission, and a bunch of other just random items, one of which appears to just be a bag of rocks he collected from outside, which is being sold for $15. What a steal. Judging from the segments of the video in which he was just speaking, it sounds like his diction has gotten considerably worse, proportionally to his general mental state.
You all continue to do excellent and very well. I know so, because I've got all these crosses on the palms of my hands and the images and the etchings of where I have been hung on that cross back in Nazareth many a millennia ago. See y'all later.
His return to YouTube is timed with more merch.
This is just the Christian stuff. It just gets to me a little bit. Oh. I think people find it interesting hearing the backstory and about him. That's why people are so interested in. Yeah. They do chocolate flavoured toothpaste. My favourite is blueberry. Nice. I feel it comes from a lot of people growing up neurodivergent in the 90s and noughties and have no actual outlet to socialise as themselves beyond toxic internet forums. Yeah. I mean, I even sort of growing up, I didn't really have much awareness or access to like the autistic community. I mean, that has been a really positive thing for my life in a lot of ways, I would say, in terms of like developing myself and like finding like a social circle or a community even that I identified to some degree with. Really helped me. Yeah, I guess these kind of online spaces is where, you know, a lot of people might have gravitated towards. Although I have been in contact with there's a couple of individuals that, you know, I maintain contact with like at the start of my YouTube channel, like all those kind of years ago. And, you know, I obviously like learned a lot about their life and, they've spent a lot of their life kind of sort of lonely and isolated. I mean, they're kind of okay with it, and they've kind of learnt to be with themselves and such, and they have like maybe one or two close friends. But it makes me really sad that, we don't necessarily get that opportunity to be socialized in the way that most people might, especially like before these kind of communities were so large. We did talk about delusions as grandeur as a coping mechanism before. Yeah. For me, there was no autistic community. It was all Autism Speaks and how tragic and broken we were, and how the only aspiration for an autistic person was not to be autistic. Yeah. There's a lot of kind of self-hatred and stuff, and that is one thing that I am sort of, grateful for from the autistic community. Taking back our identity and sort of reframing it, understanding it as more of a nuanced thing than perhaps it was in the past, kind of back then. I feel so much better than I did 2 years ago. I don't have anyone to go to now. I have two communities that are what is unrelated, and they help anyway onto the subject. It's interesting to hear about him.
Being produced for his store, meaning it's quite likely the only reason he started making videos again was to drum up attention and advertise for them so he could get some money. Obviously, his resurgence on the channel caused people to instantly start talking about what he did to Barb, prompting him to release a video addressing the allegations just a day later. For whatever reason, the background image he chose for this video is some kind of grand theater-looking thing, and I initially suspected he might have been looking for something resembling a court, then stumbled onto the theater thing and thought it was good enough. However, I was proven wrong, as he addressed this exact question on his Twitter, saying he deliberately selected the Royal Albert Hall for obvious reasons attached to this image. I don't know about you, but this doesn't exactly scream out obvious to me. In the video, he wholeheartedly pleads innocence and admonishes the trolls who are spreading fake news about him.
That's a mess of good grief right there. Why did y'all have to do that? You all really erroneously misunderstood me, period.
He then tries to flip the accusation around and say the trolls were the ones pushing for him to get into a relationship with his mom, which, in the case of Isabella Janke, is actually true.
You are the minority. You've written those smut fanfictions. You shipped me with Barbara. You shipped me with that Snorlax.
Maybe he thinks if he makes fun of his mom, it makes his case more convincing. There's a few notable things here as well. For starters, his eyes are glued to whatever notes he took for the entire duration of the video, probably because he's aware he'd get nervous having to freewheel the recording and would end up looking like a really bad liar. Didn't work too well though, since his defense from the accusation still feels extremely contrived. Chris is also a lot less concerned with keeping his voice in his fake high register in these most recent videos, often allowing his voice to drift all the way back down to how it used to be. A little later in the video, he starts talking about Isabella Janke.
Bella was the real sex criminal.
I mean, these are very unnecessary comments, but yeah, I mean, why are they still making content about this? Just get off the internet. Just get away from it all. Go to a different country if you can. Like, get some help, get some psychological support, and stay away from the internet, because it's definitely like not good. You're not gonna like change anything from this. Seeing the public flogging of Chris Chan just makes me want to mask more and not talk to people. I don't want weird internet stalkers like they do. Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that like you would get this kind of response from people. I think it's a lot to do with their history and like what they've done, of course, and what they've said, which has sort of brought some form of like a cult following to them. So I wouldn't necessarily take that to being like, people hating on autism. I mean, you can see like a lot of other autistic people talking online, sharing their stories and such. I don't think there's a lot of autistic creators that I've seen that are like unmasked as much. But it's quite hard to tell, because the majority of like other autism creators that I've seen tend to be like late diagnosed individuals. I haven't really met many people who are like diagnosed sort of earlier in life. I go to like people's descriptions on their YouTube channels, it's like late diagnosed. I'm like, oh, interesting. I don't mask myself, but I think that's something that's not always like the most believable to people. But I'm pretty much myself in most circumstances. I'm going to have to go now. Thanks for the company. I'll be back soon on the live stream. See you all next time. Bye. Thank you very much for joining and commenting, engaging and such. Nice to have you on here. Enjoy the membership. If you guys haven't liked the video, please do. That would be great. That is a mess of good grief. Huh. I actually like that phrase.
Oh, and she really wanted to try to get me in something. She's a real criminal. Fucking bitch! Calling her out! Call her out! Isabella Jenkins. She's the real sex criminal, period. She did a whole mess of adulteration and manipulation and things in her own words and attitude, insinuations and everything.
Well, I'm not sure what leads him to call her a criminal of that kind in particular. Other things he says about her are true. She did want to troll him into going the Randy Stair route and leaving this dimension, to put it mildly. However, it's almost as if he was trying to conflate the troll campaigns he was the target of with what he did to Barb so that he can take himself off the hook for it. What's strange is that despite attributing his arrest to the efforts of trolls, he simultaneously says he purposefully allowed it to happen. I guess this is like his headcanon adjusting for something being out of his control, despite his delusion about, him being God. He's like, well, I let it happen. I may not have made it happen, but I did let it happen. Chris Chan, as always, sucking on a big old tank of copium. He also briefly speaks about the woman he's been seen with, but the only new piece of information he reveals about her is that she's 30 years old and got in touch with him while he was still in jail. I suppose Chris's autistic Riz became even more powerful once he became prison hardened. What can I say? Chicks dig a man who's done time. On the same day as that video went,
Autistic Riz? Is he appropriating my terminology? How dare. GG, nice stream. Thanks, Odyssey. As I said, I love Turkey Tom's content, but points to an autistic individual who doesn't create physical mental scripts. If I made YouTube videos, I'd definitely create scripts on important topics. Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily have scripts. I have like bullet points that I use, but I mean, I think scripting is usually like the best way of creating videos. Like it seems that a lot of other content creators do like, get some like really popular kind of videos and content from scripting. I don't know. I know what kind of content I like, and I like the stuff that's a bit sort of raw, I guess, which is not. I mean, I have a podcast, which it kind of makes sense, but I don't know. I feel like I don't want to script stuff because I kind of feel like I'm masking if I do that a little bit. Like I'm trying to like perform. I don't really want to feel like I'm performing,
up, Chris paid for Twitter Blue so that he could have a check mark next to his name, displaying once again that regardless of what he's been through, he remains the same goofball from 15 years prior. He makes tweets complaining to Hasbro about the continuation of My Little Pony Generation 5, pleading for the return of Friendship is Magic, which he considers infinitely superior. Mind you, he got into MLP during the Megan arc on accident, as he was just trying to show interest in the same things she was into to win her over, but ended up becoming more obsessed with it as time went on. In a very funny turn of events, the next video he uploaded was Angelica Rosachu's Christmas Play Part 1, which is a rendition of the Nativity story with a full Sonichu cast. It starts with this bizarre low-resolution drawing of Angelica and a very eerie song that kind of reminds me of Everything at the End of Time. Before it gets into the actual play itself, Chris makes a disclaimer explaining that the reason the cast is almost all Sonichu and Rosachu characters was that they organically volunteered to be in the play. Not, I repeat, not due to some kind of segregation. It's very funny to me that he felt obligated to put that there. I wonder if he's still trying to beat the racism allegations from the attraction sign era, in which he excluded black girls from his dating pool explicitly. As for the play itself, it's mostly just a green screened Chris superimposed on a snowy background to evoke CMOS vibes, of course, while he reads off his schizophrenic understanding of the nativity scene. Sometimes, when he's speaking from the point of view of a different character, a JPEG will flash on screen over him. Pretty subtle filmmaking. While I won't get into the minutia of every single part of this play, let me digress to tell you about the drawings that appear throughout them. Despite there being a sizable amount of them and all of them being listed for over $100 at the least, they've actually all sold, despite their abysmal quality. It's hard to believe that Chris is managing to monetize his own insanity in real time, and there's absolutely nothing that anyone can do about it. My personal favorites from this collection are the ones involving George Bush, for whatever reason. In both of the drawings featuring the ex-president, he's seen laughing at the part of the gospel in which Peter falls into the water for not having enough faith. And George is saying, "What could be wrong with with my footing. As the many different parts of the Christmas play are uploaded to YouTube, Chris Chan is looking for skilled people to open a Minecraft server with. On the 25th of October, he announced he'd start live streaming, and no matter how much people were grieving for the fact that he was free, at least they'd get some content in exchange for his crimes against humanity that are whatever happened with his mom, and also unleashing Chris Chan into the general public. His first stream, aptly titled The Return of Jesus Christ Chan Sonichu Prime, and I say aptly titled because his neo-Pentecostal roots really start showing.
And there you go, first time online, speaking on tongues, because I have literally connected with the Akashic records and everything.
We get a few classic trolling moments as well. It's nice to know that no matter how far gone you are as a human being, a troll will always trick you into saying the N-word. Speaking of trolling,
Obviously try keep the questions general, good, safe. Why that gift of all gifts?
I have no idea why Chris thought it was wise to allow people to play GIFs on screen with donations. The feature is doomed to be abused by the toxics, as he would call them. While answering a question about how his jail experience was in relation to the one he had back in 33 AD in his previous incarnation, Chris gets briefly thugged and is asked a very inappropriate question.
It was actually no different than... Actually, it was quite different as opposed to being buried than when I was Jesus back in Jerusalem.
For the record, that gif of the African-American gentleman looking quite distraught playing on the top right of the screen is the result of serious thug activities, sometimes involving corn, which I cannot display on screen, but basically the meme here is that it's funny to sneak that onto random people's streams, which has been dubbed thugging, though I'm sure that Chris had no idea it had even happened. Regardless of the people trolling him, the stream was a big success in his eyes, now sitting at a little over 60,000 views, which is definitely not bad. A day before Halloween, another stream went live, consisting of Chris reading some of his own literature. Like all of his streams, it wouldn't be complete without some trolling. Though I'll spare you from having to watch Chris defend himself against the allegations again, there is a portion of this stream in which he says that the Barb incident didn't happen, but he specifies that it didn't happen in this timeline. Maybe that's how he squares it in his mind and secretly believes he shifted into a different reality, effectively exonerating himself of whatever he did in the past timeline or something. Maybe we can get someone smart like Stephen Hawking to explain what this means in between his sessions of watching midgets do complex math equations on Little St. James. In his first stream from November, we see a return to form.
There is no Ian. There will be no addressing of anybody by the name of Ian because there is no Ian here.
It's very funny that Liquid Chris's troll campaign was so effective that the name Ian still grinds Chris's gears to this day. If being an accomplished writer and visual artist and being a demigod isn't impressive enough, Chris also proves himself to be quite capable at impressions.
I have two number 9s, a number 9 large, a number 6 with extra dip, a number 7.
I mean, this is just... I was kind of... I don't know. It's kind of moving, or the video's kind of shifting into sort of highlighting things that people might consider to be like funny or cringe. I don't know if this is necessarily like needed. So having a look at some of the comments at the side. Okay, but you can only do this insanity and monetize it is because people are watching it. I don't get why you would interact with his content. It's because he's a LOLCOW. Most people troll him. And they seem to have done it in pretty much every way possible. In person, online, you know. He needs to set his super chat donation limit a bit higher as well. Like, $1. Jeez. Let's stay clear of Minecraft, or I'll be on it for days. That game needs a warning. Nathaniel, we're watching a sort of a semi-video essay documentary about Chris Chan by Turkey Tom, who is an autistic person who is a proclaimed sort of LOLCOW on the internet. See you later, Diamond Eyes. Lovely to see you. I have to roll, love, y'all. Nice to see you too, Irene. Thank you for coming on. The way that Chris Chan speaks seems a bit juvenile considering his age. I think maybe it's... I hesitate to, like, make fun of, like, people's voices or, like, their physical characteristics, because this person is obviously, like, fairly mentally ill. And you know, I don't necessarily think that's like reflective of autism, but it's no, they're definitely very mentally ill. I wouldn't want to, you know. Oh God, I'm so out of touch. What is a LolCow? Someone post the definition of LolCow in the chat, please.
If you didn't catch that, those were supposed to be Big Smoke from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas and Eric Cartman from South Park. The most striking moment of this entire stream, however, comes near its end. As people were spamming "Chris is boinking the bar bussy right now" in the chat, somebody makes a text donation that deeply disturbs Chris. A lot of people have read deeply into this moment, trying to understand what emotion Chris was expressing, with most concluding it was pure, unadulterated guilt. On the 7th of November, some pretty interesting news was shared on the subreddit when user TaxesTheft98 posted the following. I was working around 15 minutes away from the temple, so I stopped by to reminisce. Lo and behold, the new Sonichu car was there. I shit my pants in disbelief when Chris stepped out of the house with boxes to bring to the car. I got out, introduced myself, and made assurances that I would not take pictures. We had a 10-minute or so kind of awkward but pleasant confirmation. It was confirmed that Lynchburg is the new place of residence, but no other specifics were offered. Barb is still around and doing okay. It turns out that Chris was just grabbing some belongings and took Barb shopping earlier in the day. I did see Barb at the door and heard the bark and howl of an old beagle that I've heard so many times. There were no mentions of Sonichu or Rosechu, but we did talk briefly about the new Sonic Lego sets. Manifesting was brought up, and I was blessed, and we shook hands before I left. Overall, Chris seemed a little nervous, but maybe happy to have a normal and friendly conversation. I took no pictures, as I knew if I did, the conversation would be over, so you just have my word here. I'm still in disbelief over it all. Oh, and the medallion was being worn. Contrary to what many still thought at this point, there was no restraining order preventing Chris from seeing Barb. So in the future, it's entirely possible that another bout of cuddling may occur, and may God save Barbara if that does. On the 10th, Chris offers his very valuable services to Nintendo once more. If you're not aware of the deep lore, if I recall correctly, he's been tricked on more than one occasion into believing he was in contact with many representatives of Nintendo who are interested in making a game out of the Sonichu IP. Strangely enough, Chris thinks that his expertise in playing Pokemon qualifies him to work on the games. On the same day, he does a Q&A stream. For starters, Chris apparently used his healing powers in a pretty creative way.
Yeah, my autism for the most part has been cured. Just through meditation and affirmations.
You heard it here first, folks. Chris Chan is officially not autistic, or at least
Have you guys ever cured your autism through affirmations? Oh no. Oh dear. Yeah, cannot confirm that is a way to do it. Have you guys seen that video? Oh, have you guys seen that video of that guy who goes to like a fundamentalist Christian church, and, like, goes up to the pastor and says something along the lines of, my son has autism, like, they've got no brains. And then, like, the pastor starts rambling off, like, some godly spell in order to remove the autism from his bloodline. It's you've got to watch it. I don't know where it is. I saw it on Instagram. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, the guy literally, like, starts like that, like it's some kind of like purge going on from his bloodline, and starts like rolling around on the floor, and then he gets up and he does like a headstand, and then like flips over on the floor. Does he really think he's Jesus or just trolling? I think this person has very significant delusions, Nathaniel, and it's, as the way that the internet goes, people are feeding into it a little bit. Sounds like an intense blessing. I don't know where it is, but I will try and find it. I'll try and find
mostly
it.
Not autistic, as he puts it. Later on, he's asked about which of his prophecies came true.
Which my predictions have occurred. I mean, you guys think, just think about it. There's a lot of predictions have occurred. I mean, just Well, I prophesized in book 10, a lot of details have been manifested, literally. I mean, yeah, just look at this. We actually did have a virus that and that vaccine was developed for it. More recent years that end up going to the future for to get the cure for, and going back for the cure to prevent that happening on the C197 app.
If you got a migraine from trying to decipher his deep tism talk, don't worry, I'll translate. According to Chris, all the way back in Sonichu number 10, he foresaw the pandemic. However, upon further inspection, it appears he's referring to the part of Sonichu 10 where a vaccine is created to cure homosexuality. Not sure if that qualifies as a prophecy that came true, unless Bovid has been making people zesty this whole time, and apparently I just never found out, but I don't think it's been doing that. He also weighs in on a current political topic with a curious opinion.
Is right. Sonichu Prime is neutral, but we're siding with Israel, really.
He's already identified himself as the Old Testament God many times, so I'm not particularly surprised he's siding with the Chosen here. A day later, Chris tweeted about feeling woozy at times, which his friends chalked up to him under eating. For once in his life, this may actually be true, as Chris isn't exactly short, and he lost a lot of weight during his time in jail. This also brings up some questions about his physical health. While he seems to eat a lot of fruits, Chris is far from a healthy person, so it's worth wondering how long he'll last. As of the writing of this video, he's 41 years old. How many more good years does he have in him? 15? 20? I can't imagine how Chris will be if he makes it to his 60s, though it's a safe bet it won't be any better than he is right now. A couple days later, Chris once again addressed the topic of family love, though this time coded through Sonichu language. I would like everyone to refrain from their perverted and strange ideas and dreams about I and the Sonichu and Rosichu species and evolution lines. I do see all of you in your fiction writings, and I don't even have to consciously read them. How the smut fix, in general, with Sonichu Prime and Rosichu Prime with I, and even that which included between mother and daughter. I'm not defending it whatsoever. Congrats on discovering and manifesting distant alternate universes and timelines that need not exist or happen. The absurd is often appealing because it is unexpected and funny, but the ones who thought and or wrote and drew it out hardly have any empathy for those alternate universe individuals and their universes out of the multiverse that we reside in. Be careful what you think and or wish for. You might manifest that with yourself in the hot seat. Good luck with that timeline shift. Knit between the lines of that verbal diarrhea is the clear implication that by writing or drawing these things, people are bringing them into reality. Again, is this some kind of veiled way of shifting the blame to the people who were speculating about what he did with Barb before he actually, allegedly, did it? As if it wasn't his choice to do what he did, but the trolls manifested it into reality? I mean, given the lengths that Chris is known to go to so he can evade blame for something, it wouldn't really be shocking to me if he literally ran into another dimension in order to avoid accountability. Soon after, he posted a video reviewing the comments he got on his Etsy page, starting the video out with trademark Chris Chan professionalism.
Once again, you can look at the Etsy store here and purchase medallions when they are in stock. Oh, pardon me.
By the way, I didn't turn the burp up for comedic effect. That's how it sounds in the original video. At one point...
I need to see this purging next stream if you find it. It is something. I've tried to find it on YouTube, but I can't seem to. But when I did type in something like pasta cures autism, there is a pretty hefty amount of videos under that topic. So I think maybe at some point we might have to react to some of these. Like, I did not realize that there was such a need for this type of religious curing of autism. Crazy. Yeah, it's so horrible. World's so cruel. Humanity finding new ways to bully people. A paradox is a pastor stand on his head seeking attention. I can't cure my autism with affirmations, but my therapist sure seems to think I can. You need to get a different therapist, Paula. Damn. I was invited to a Pentecostal church a few weeks ago. All I can say is I need a week to recover. I mean, I just kind of putting it out there, I suppose. Like, it's pretty apparent, I think, but I'm not. I'm definitely an atheistic person myself, but I don't think I get to the point where I I don't just kind of hate or mock religion. If I was to meet a religious person, I went to Thailand. I was pretty much surrounded by Buddhists and Hindus of all sorts of kind of religious faiths and such, but it's definitely not something that I believe in myself. I'm not spiritual. I'm pretty kind of straight and narrow science atheist kind of type of person, but I have conversations with people about it, especially about things that are not particularly like not some things that we can't necessarily, or we haven't necessarily delved into in terms of science. It's definitely you know, but when it comes to people making claims about like curing people of stuff, that is the point where I'm like, you know, we probably need to try and dismantle this a little bit, you know. Hate preacher Greg Locke keeps saying autism is a demonic possession. Oh dear. Yeah, we're gonna have to dive into this stuff at some point. 100%. Amen. Oh, Peter. Yeah, we'll have to have a look into those videos on a later live stream.
He reads a comment from someone calling him Ian, and it visibly still gets to him. Perhaps the strangest thing, though, about this video is the fact that Chris has been raking in thousands of dollars from selling merchandise. Can you imagine being...
It's pretty sad, isn't it, that these people do this? Like, they actually, like, buy things, they, like, spend money in order to continue to, like, troll this individual. Like, WTF. It's not. Like, it's equally, well, not equally, but it's pretty, like, strange behavior, isn't it? Like, why are you putting so much effort into trying to do this? Like, it's not good.
Like a normal cartoonist or someone that puts like effort into something when making art, and then you see that this Sonichu garbage is regularly pulling in over $100 a piece, I would be fuming. Then again, Chris spent 2 years in jail for boinking Barbussy, so I'm not totally sure that anyone should envy him. On the 20th, he does the first proper gaming live stream since his return, and the trolling followed suit. It's great to know that he's made peace with the pickle. Later on in the same stream, he denies having bought a PS5, which contradicts his PSN having shown him playing Street Fighter 6. Either he logged on to someone else's PS5 to play the game, or the more likely possibility is that he's lying so people don't think he's spending his money on useless toys. On the 27th, Chris's car was spotted in the driveway of a property on Big Island, Virginia. This house is owned by the leader of the Praters, the main person organizing the business side of things. And though Chris may or may not...
Autism, by definition, cannot be cured, therefore, if cured, it's not autism. Yeah, it can't be cured. It's you know, you're born with an autistic brain. It's not really something that you can, like, consent to as an adult to, like, change your brain neurology. It doesn't work like that. When people talk about cures, they're pretty much chiefly talking about prevention, if you know what I mean. I won't go too much into that, but that tends to be kind of the roots of curing autism. The church I was raised in were very protective of disabled people. I meant the pastor that does the church stuff. So like my brain gets them mixed up. Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying that this is representative of all religious people. I'm just talking about like specific instances where people are like thinking that they can like cure people of all sorts of different things by speaking like the word of God. That's where people lose me, I'm gonna say.
I'll be living full-time at the Big Island house. It's almost certain that he's been using it as his studio. I'll try not to get too sidetracked over Chris's orbiters, given the sheer volume of people doing anything in their power to write their name into Christery, but I do feel obliged to do it in this case. It gets a little confusing to continue with like the terminology here, since there are multiple members, so when I talk about the Praetors leader, I'll call him by his first name, Caden. All the way back in 2020, Caden, along with 2 other Proto-Praetor members, visited the temple to speak to Chris about a potential business opportunity, showing a golden version of the Sonichu medallion one of the members had handcrafted and painted with a paint that supposedly had 24 karat gold in it. Their idea was to use a mold press to produce Sonichu medallions en masse and sell them, giving Chris a cut of every sale for being responsible for creating the character. Despite his extensive history of being taken advantage of and tricked by trolls, Chris decided the Praetors were trustworthy, saying, "I could tell by soul reading them that their intentions were legit, honest, and true." Soon after, it was announced that the Praetors were going to start working on a lore Bible, presumably to not only compile, but articulate the properly insurmountable volume of schizobabble that Chris has spewed out about the dimensional merge. The Praetors were responsible for this now infamous sermon given at the Goochland Public Library. This picture, which is one of the most popular pictures of Chris ever, came from one of his interactions with the Praetors and not from his mugshot as many seem to believe. Even Isabella Janke, the aforementioned insane woman responsible for first divulging the news of Chris's misdeeds with Barbara, was briefly considered a Praetor. Besides maybe the idea idea guys who destroyed Chris's mind permanently with the merge stuff, the Praetors are the people most responsible for the way Chris's life is currently structured, but there's a little bit more to it than many people know. The reason why we're even talking about them in the first place is that around a month after the Big Island house Chris is currently working out of was bought, Caden was charged with 4 felonies for allegedly manufacturing, or growing, I don't really know what the right term is here, and distributing psilocybin mushrooms, which are very much illegal. Based on what I can glean from the legal documents attached to this case, although I should note I'm not very fluent in legalese, Caden pled guilty and was sentenced to 19 days in jail and 5 years of probation. This is relevant.
Yeah, I can't imagine that's a very good mix with, like, schizophrenia. Like, I mean, I have seen some stuff about, like, the use of, like, psilocybin in terms of, like, treating depression and addiction. There seems to be some good literature around that, but just from what I have understood about it, it seems like probably, like, not a good idea to touch that stuff if you have delusions and schizophrenia. I don't know if this is something that Chris took, but if that person, that individual there, is growing them, then I imagine that, and the fact that they might be, like, trolling them and setting up, like, sermons for them to, like, live stream or, like, talk about certain aspects of their beliefs seems very sus to me, you know. There's some crazy stuff people do in some churches, like playing with poisonous snakes.
Because Chris is in an extraordinarily comfy and financially rewarding situation, exclusively due to the structure placed beneath him by Caden and the Praetors. And if something were to happen to Caden, or if he violated that probation, Chris would suffer the mother of all rug pulls. Maybe there'd be another benefactor to save him, who knows? But what is certain is that all of this stability rests on very unreliable grounds. But let's return to Chris himself. On the 29th, he communicates to his audience that he no longer wants to be seen as the old Chris, saying he doesn't want to be seen as bigoted in a plethora of different ways. He doesn't want to pine for the attention of girls, etc. Oh, and I guess it's important to note that he expresses this deep, heartfelt concern that he's being misrepresented through Family Guy fan art that includes Sonichu and Pickle Rick. You see, Peter symbolizes the old, always upset virgin with rage Chris, while the new Chris is standing on the left, leaving the house with Sonichu. I'm actually not sure where Pickle Rick fits into all of this, but I'm sure there's some meaning to his presence as well. I'm just not smart enough to figure it out. On the same day, he dedicates a post of his to address those on Kiwi Farms who are talking about him. I am quite aware that the intentions of those on Kiwi are not great. With that stated, I am more than aware, as I have made clear, of the likely usage of I as leverage in the popularity of one's content and self, as well as any LOLCOW content. I am not a LOLCOW, and I feel concern and disappointment with those who see others in their respective drama and stressful situations as comical. I feel pity for they who do not have empathy upon the pains of others, including myself, as well as not being open for the present and future better individuals they are more than capable of being in light, power, good, and righteousness. In general, I want it very clear that I humbly wish you all authentically have no intentions of making or promoting any mockery of I or anyone with disabilities or any aspects that may feel cringeworthy to you. I am not the LOLCOW that I was mislabeled as back in the late 2000s, and I do not...
Well, I agree with that. I don't think that people should be doing this. I mean, the individual definitely has some issues, and obviously, like, disabilities, you know. It should have been nipped in the bud, like, quite a while ago.
Identify as such. If you all would please, I am to be appreciated and understood as the more mature individual that I have become and shall maintain for my further soul searching, literal meditations, and even my psychic connections with literally everything there is, was, and shall be. Meditate on that for yourselves. I think the best way to articulate what Chris is saying here is that he's doing the same thing he's always done. Complain about being trolled. However, post-merge Messiah complex Chris feels obliged to filter everything he says through an often biblical-sounding thesaurus vocabulary, which just results in him sounding like he overdosed on Thorazine. I suppose he believes that if he keeps saying, I don't identify as a LOLCOW, people will just respect that. Unfortunately, the real world isn't Quickville, and his status as not just a LOLCOW, but the greatest LOLCOW of all time is non-negotiable. After cooking Elon Musk on Twitter for no comprehensible reason, on the 1st of December, Chris gets tagged in a post containing fan art of Joshua Martinez. Since Josh is kind of deep Chris lore, let me explain who he is. When Chris was very young and still having trouble with being nonverbal due to his autism, autism, he went to speech therapy, where he met another kid, Joshua, who was there for his very strong Spanish accent. This marks the beginning of Chris's lifelong appreciation for Spanish, which is evident in the fact that to this day, when he's going to call himself Jesus, he pronounces it as Jesus. Josh was one of Chris's best friends during his childhood, and after both of them left speech therapy, they remained distant acquaintances for the following years. However, in 2007, when Chris was starting to become famous online for who he is, Josh found out about it and became one of his earliest trolls, being the first person to ever catfish Chris. During the original Encyclopedia Dramatica page saga, where Chris made a series of Herculean efforts to try and get their attention off of him, Chris started bringing up Josh's name. You see, during this time, Chris believed the reason they were after him as hard as they were was that he was so self-evidently awesome and talented that everyone was trolling him out of envy. In order to dissuade them from doing so, he started saying Joshua was awesome and talented instead, saying that multiple famous female celebrities, which he referred to as were lusting after him. You can imagine how effective that tactic was. To say the least, Josh and Chris had a mixed history, and the fact that Josh trolled him so early on meant that he got under Chris's skin when it was still very easy to do so, and made his mark. This explains why
Yeah. I mean, blatant sort of mate crime going on here. I mean, it's if you guys don't know what mate crime is, it's pretty much when people befriend autistic people in order to make fun of them or get some kind of gain out of the situation. Sometimes even to like manipulate like a disabled, well, it doesn't have to be autistic, it could be any disabled individual. It's just pretty prevalent among autistic people because, you know, sometimes we can lack sort of the social kind of emotional stuff, and we can be sort of very trustworthy when it comes to direct like communication. Not really always being able to kind of pick up on stuff like this, understand like the sort of the social context of it all. It's not good stuff. It's not good. I mean, I did have a video sort of lined up for us to have a look at about mate crime, but this is like, you know, it's a long video so far, so probably maybe leave it for another time. But yeah, that's so unnecessarily cruel. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. There's a lot of bad stuff going on from like everywhere. This video is just like a horrible thing, a horrible story.
On the 4th of December, when someone by the name of Autistic posted fan art of Josh that made him look very buff and tagged Chris, he responded with, "Raffle, man, if you think Josh was built buff like Chris Evans or Lucas Lee, you're way off." He pretty much had a string bean build with some physical strength within it when I last saw him years ago. It's very odd to see Chris make fun of someone's appearance when he's so sensitive about his own, and will block and shut down anyone who tries to point out that his physique is far from what one would call graceful. A day later, Chris was once again spotted in public, this time at the Greene County Sheriff's Office, with his panties visibly pulled up to his belly button. Someone replied to the post speculating that he was at the sheriff's office in relation to his probation, or possibly to take legal action against the people who had been doxing him. However, the original poster explained what Chris was there for, saying, "The reason is neither. As far as my understanding, he was trying to reclaim items of his that the sheriff's office has in their possession." A little later, a completely unrelated person who happened to be in the MLP community made a tweet that read, "Repost if you are against predators being welcomed back into our community, only because they apologize after getting caught." Quite the sensible position, and based on all of the freaks I've voluntarily exposed myself to in order to make videos about these people, I'd say it's a requirement for any functional community to get rid of those kinds of people. However, a day later, Christian thought he should add his own 2 cents into the conversation, saying, "The misunderstandings linger from those who misconceive of others' intentions or lack thereof in pure accident or happenstance. Do not be closed-minded to apologies, and when one has authentically done nothing wrong or is not guilty of anything, especially after being proven this in court of law, they are to be welcomed back into society, period, without any further bias based on the past misconceptions. As for those who have and are, or have redeemed themselves proper, let them be welcomed. And if they act improperly again, then they are shown to require more time to meditate and reflect for themselves." It's worth making a note here that Chris was never proven like not guilty in a court of law, although I guess he is still innocent until proven guilty. Really what happened was he was placed in an autism deferred disposition program program that allowed him to basically be on probation due to his disability. Based on what Chris himself said in the letters while he was in jail, no one ever talked to Barbara, and I doubt the audios of Chris confessing to Janky were ever brought up at all. As a matter of fact, the tweet he's replying to is talking about people who apologize. But has Chris even apologized? He's just been claiming he's soul bonded with Barb. He's never apologized for anything as far as I can tell. In fact, he goes back and forth between denying it and then simultaneously being like, but if someone did do something like that, it'd be fine. The gif attached to this tweet is an anime guy getting punched in the face so hard that he flies away. I don't really know why that is. I can't explain it, but it's there. On the same day, Chris makes a hard pivot to talk about Rick and Morty, claiming that the night episode of the 7th season is accurate in relation to the dimensional merge. A couple days later, he drops new video content. 2 shorts uploaded in reverse order called Toys for Tots. Doesn't seem he understands the concept of shorts too well though, since the 2 videos are actually one long video split in half, and it only makes sense if you watched both. But again, they're posted in reverse order because he uploaded part 2 before part 1 when he could have uploaded one regular video instead. In it, he complains about people taking pictures of him when he's out in public as if he's Bigfoot. But I'm not sure why he's only expressing his disapproval of people doing that now, given it's been happening for months, but maybe he only just realized. On the same day, Boogie2988 tweeted out celebrating his 6-month anniversary with his girlfriend, to which Chris replied, "I for one appreciate and like seeing you both content and mutually appreciating each other as soulmates. It is very good." Is getting a relationship blessed by Chris a good or a bad thing? What kind of abyssal energies can you be accursed with if the power of Sonichu starts acting on your relationship? Soon after, Gino Samuel, the person responsible for documenting Chris's entire life over the course of dozens of long-form videos on YouTube, replied to someone tagging him showing a 3D printed Sonichu medallion alongside a certificate of authenticity. Chris passively aggressively responded to Gino's post, saying, "Gino, don't even with the certificate. 3D printed never surpasses the full soul effort in handcrafting. It's not funny." This is funny because Chris is the last person on earth I'd expect to be an art elitist, since the quality of his drawings of Sonichu have remained steadily awful ever since he began making them. I guess this is another instance of Chris's fixation on his characters being represented the right way by his standards, similar to how he got really mad at Sonic's arms changing colors at one point. Another of his fixations, as mentioned previously, is My Little Pony, specifically the Friendship is Magic show, which he's been prophesying will be uncancelled and resume soon, just about any day now. Probably when the merge is complete. In another tweet, he says that it shall be done by divine intervention and command. In his mind, he says that MLP Generation 5 has simply taken place too early in this timeline, and it must be corrected. I'd expect him to have already corrected it by now, given that he's supposed to be God, unless MLP falls outside of God's purview, which is somehow not that far-fetched of an idea. On the 16th of December, an employee of the local UPS notices that Chris is at his workplace and takes a picture of him through CCTV.
No. There's people at the workplace taking pictures like with the CCTV. Oh my god. Oh. Yeah, he was failed by every role model figure in his life and was bullied relentlessly. True, even the idea where I'm as externalizing the self state is a worst case scenario for an ND person. Yeah. There is audio of him bragging about it, but then denied it afterwards and claimed it was him curing her of her sin. I mean, he's definitely a very reprehensible person, but I mean, the amount of like the facts, like all the delusions and all, like the actual like disabilities, you know, I can't believe that this has gone on for like 16 years of like people just making fun of this individual who quite clearly needs a lot of psychological support and help. It's so strange. I had no idea about this guy being talked about in this video. Sorry, I meant she. I need to respect pronouns. Yeah, do they identify as she? I just generally use they because I'm not always too sure. But it seems like Turkey Tom's not really leaning into this too much in terms of like using the pronouns. Most trans people don't accept Chris Chan as trans, as they spoke about transitioning to get easier access to women. Ooh, that's concerning. That's a topic that I'm not gonna touch. However, I do know that there is a pretty like strong crossover with autism and the LGBTQI plus community. It seems to be a pretty strong crossover there. I think even with like autism and like being a trans individual, sort of transitioning and such. or like gender identity related things. Seems to be a lot more. They also used to be really homophobic. That's not good.
Despite the camera's very low resolution, Chris Chan's appearance is so recognizable that you can tell it's him with barely any visual information. The lanky legs with the tube socks, the scuffed gym shoes, the jean skirt, not to mention his barrel-like disposition and dyed mane. He's got a recognizable look, you gotta give it to him. No one else can steal that Chris Chan swag. A few days later, Chris puts up a new video on the YouTube channel that consists basically of him playing with his Transformer toys and making them dialogue with one another.
Listen to me, young warriors. There's a lot more to this than merely what meets the eye.
This video sees the revival of one of Chris's oldest Sonichu concepts, the private villa of corrupted citizens, originally created to house his trolls and the evil witch Mary Lee Walsh, who was the dean at his community college who kept taking down his attraction signs. A day later, he's spotted again, this time at an airport with his girlfriend Flutter. The person who posted this sighting to Reddit mentioned that Chris was on the same flight as they were, from Charlotte to Richmond, Virginia. I have not been able to figure out what he went there for, though the two most likely candidates are some kind of convention or a business-related meeting. He's seen with Flutter again the next day, wearing an alternate version of the classic. According to the person who posted the images and was seeing Chris and Flutter interact from up close, despite her appearance, she was the one keeping Chris at bay, who apparently was making trouble in the restaurant they were in. Not only was she the one paying for the meal, which Chris allegedly consumed like a child, but he kept trying to talk to random strangers and bothering the staff while Flutter pulled him away. On December 22nd, Chris does his last stream of the year, coloring the special Sonichu number 0 HD edition. As of the writing of this video, the last time he was spotted was in another state entirely, North Carolina, in the town of Cary, picking up tickets for the Animate convention, which is going to take place in
I know I keep saying this, but I just can't believe like how many like people are just like taking pictures and like keeping up to date with this stuff. I think Chris knows what he's doing and he likes the attention he gets. I don't think the trolls bother him personally. I believe he just doesn't care about anything besides the own world he's created. I think he's very deep into the delusion, that is for sure. I think it probably does get to them, not gonna lie. Like, I mean, we don't really know, other than like, I mean, the definitely has some issues which are showing out with their behaviour, that is for sure. You know, I don't think it's a question about whether it gets like to them negatively. I think it's more of a question about like, are these people encouraging like negative behaviors and actions and delusions through this type of thing? You know, I think that's the main issue. Like it's the people who are like conducting like mate crime and sort of manipulating and sort of egging them on. You know, the problem with those seeking answers is that they stop at some point. It's like a Black Mirror episode. It is, Valentine. I read the Sonichu comic books because I feel that they were very amusing. Turkey Tom selectively uses the right and wrong pronouns. You can see that. You can see it best when he does Ezra Miller. It seems to be somewhat of like a counter movement. I've seen it from a few like YouTube channels. Like they're not wanting to outwardly like take a stance on anything like that, but they like selectively like choose how they refer to people. You see it in a lot of like the manosphere content as well. Yeah, I read that autism is connected with being unattached to your gender. Can confirm, lol. Delusions of grandeur. Yeah. People are definitely playing into it.
Raleigh. Despite the great fear that overtook people when Chris was released for allegedly having done something unspeakable, the people around him have proven themselves decent at keeping him at bay. On the other hand, it's great that Chris hasn't become a roving maniac wandering the streets prowling for Barbara lookalikes to soul bond with non-consensually. However, how long can that last? How long until the Sonichu containment support circle breaks? Some have brought up ethical questions in regards to the Praetors making money off of the medallions and merch, since Chris is technically disabled and potentially evil. But perhaps a better question is, how ethical is it to do any business with Chris, given what he allegedly did to his mom? There's really no telling of how all this will turn out. Only God knows. And by God, I mean Chris Chan. With that being said, thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I've been Turkey Tom, and until next time, leave me alone.
Well, that was an experience and a half. My lord. I did not know to like the extent that like I didn't know the extent of like the things that they'd done but also like how much like the world and the internet just constantly like follows them around and like documents what they're doing and conversations and like their gaming history and what they've done. It's absolutely crazy that people have this much information, and like people in workplaces taking like CCTV footage and like sharing it on the internet. Like it's not good behavior. Like, my God, like this person's obviously disabled. This person like obviously has very, very significant delusions. Like, why is nobody like pointing out this kind of behavior as being bad? Like, it doesn't, it's I'm not by any means undermining like the like significant like horrific things that this person's done, but they're obviously not in the right headspace. They're obviously like needing some pretty significant psychological help. It's really deeply disturbing. Like, yeah, exactly, Paula. It's really deeply disturbing that this is something that just like continues to like, be a part of the internet. Like, it's not normal behavior to go and like stalk people and like monitor their like every move and such. It's crazy. It's crazy. It does not. It does. The fact of what this individual has done does not excuse like the terrible behavior of the other people that are like a part of their life, and like people on the internet for like constantly stalking and like taking pictures of them and talking about like the symptoms of their significant like mental illness. It's crazy. Nobody in this story is good. Exactly. I think they're cruel. It's like people that watch a bad accident. Yeah. I mean, I can't think of like individuals who would find this interesting or fun or worthwhile to pursue. Like, it's not funny. It's not like a, it's just, there's no part of this that is like, other than making fun of their behavior because they are significantly disabled and like obviously very mentally ill. It's not like that's not a good thing. It's painful. Yeah, he needs an internet restraining order. He needs to have the channel like blocked, banned. Like, there needs to be some kind of enforcement there on getting this person off the internet, because it's definitely not doing any good for their mental well-being. And there needs to be some people within law enforcement or one of the psychologists or people that Chris works with into these relationships, these friendships that they have, because I don't think that I think it's probably like feeding into this whole situation. Like, and it's from what you guys have been saying in the chat, it's been going on for like quite a long time. Like, it definitely needs to stop. That is for sure. I really hope there is not any more videos coming about this. You know, I mean, it's good to be aware of this kind of thing and like be up to date and obviously react to it from like my own sort of perspective and sort of through my knowledge of autism. But I really hope that this stuff does not continue to come out and that Chris distances himself from this and gets some like really intensive support.